Well, we've reached the end of October, well, at least close to the end. And it is time for your monthly wrap up as we finish off the month of October and head into the final 2 months of the year. I'm your host, Craig Hemke, and joining us for this month's Sprott Money Monthly Wrap Up is my old friend, Chris Powell. Chris, of course, the Secretary and Treasurer of the Gold Antitrust Action Committee. Been leading the fight for fair pricing of gold and silver for about 25 years now. And it's a pleasure to call him a friend. I know he's a good friend of Eric Sprott as well. Chris, good to see you.
Great to be with you, Craig.
Again, on behalf of everybody that collects precious metal and understands sound money, thank you to you and Bill Murphy for all of your efforts over the years. We stand on your shoulders trying to push this whole thing forward. Again, GATA, GATA.org is the website, correct?
That's right.
Please, everybody go there and you get it. Is it just the U.S. where it's a tax-free deduction to support you guys?
We are a 501c3 tax-exempt educational and civil rights foundation under the U.S. tax codes. So we're tax-exempt, and donations to GATA in the United States are federally tax-exempt. Unfortunately, outside the United States, you're on your own.
Just do it for your own goodwill. All right. Hey, and not only support GATA, please, but also support Sprott Money. They are the people that provide all of this information all month long, all next month for that matter, all December and going forward. SprottMoney.com should always be on your mind whenever you're looking for physical precious metal. In fact, they take Bitcoin and Ethereum now, too, as payment. So if you want to swap out of some of your Bitcoin, over $70,000 for a Bitcoin last night I saw. You can use that, swap that into physical metal, and any order over $500, they will ship it to you and insure it for free. SprottMoney.com or call them at 888-861-0775. All right, Chris, what a year we've had. I know we're wrapping up the month before we get down to the, I guess, more granular level of what's taken place this month. How about the whole year? How surprising has it been to you to see gold perform like this, up over 30%, almost 35% year to date?
Well, whenever anything good happens to the monetary metals, I'm surprised. But what was the book title? But down so long, it looks like up to me. Given that the world is falling apart and there's, many strategic divisions and, alliances being built and changed, I suppose we shouldn't be too surprised. I think we've been expecting countries to realize that the dollar and gold price suppression were the underpinnings of U.S. imperialism in the world, and we figured that eventually even the dumbest countries would wake up to that, and they are waking up to that, and they are slowly moving away from the dollar now, and they are rapidly moving into gold and silver, the monetary metals, money without counterparty risk, and I think that trend is going to continue. The recent BRICS meeting did not come up with a new reserve or a new trading currency, but as Jim Rickards wrote the other day, it does. The BRICS system is going to incorporate gold in trading, if only insofar as the BRICS countries will be inclined to use gold to balance any trade deficits they have among each other, and that this will continue to support the gold price as well as the increasing central bank purchases for ordinary reserves. So the world is changing. I think the future for the monetary metals is very bright. As for the future for monetary metals investors in the United States, what they're going to do to us if we ever get in a position of making any money, I guess my only investment advice has been to find a safe planet to keep your monetary metals on, and when you find it, please call me.
Let us all know. Do you think, again, is much of this related to that central bank accumulation that has been continuing at a record pace for the third year in a row?
Oh, I'm sure it is. The central banks have been, have turned from from net sellers and lenders of gold to very big net purchasers. That is going to put a floor under the gold price. I think they are going to be buying the dips. I think they're already buying the dips. Andrew Maguire, the London metals trader, whose work is broadcast by Kinesis Money, has been showing us charts. So is James Turk, showing us charts that gold seems to be advancing in a very orderly stair-step pattern. I don't think that's a natural free market pattern. I think that is a pattern in which the people who are controlling or trying to influence the market are trying to make sure that the gold price rise is, as the central bankers and the BIS people say, orderly. Rickards has long argued that central banks weren't so much objecting to a rise in the gold price, but to a disorderly rise in the gold price. Well, that's the thing about, free markets. I mean, if free markets are orderly, they're not free. And central banks don't like free markets. Really, the major purpose of central banks is making sure there never are free markets anywhere, particularly not in the monetary metals. If you go back to the speech given by William R. Wright, who was then White. William R. White was the head of the Economic and Monetary Department of the BIS back when was it? I think it was 2010, something like that. He gave a speech to a BIS conference in Basel, in which he said that one of the four major purposes of international central bank cooperation was to influence gold and asset prices in the foreign exchange markets in circumstances where he said this might be thought useful. Central banks are very sensitive to currency values and exchange rates, and they rig the markets. They rig the currency markets. I really, especially at this time, like to go back to the April 1974 meeting in Secretary of State Henry Kissinger's office. Kissinger was meeting with his, what was the title? It was Assistant Undersecretary for Economic and Business Affairs, Thomas O. Enders, who was from Connecticut, but I really wasn't familiar with him here. Enders was explaining to Kissinger why the United States had to prevent its Western European allies from returning gold to a bigger role in the financial system. Enders said that whoever has the most gold can change its price periodically and thereby change all financial values in the world. Enders called gold the reserve creating instrument. He said it was the dominant means of creating reserves. By reserves, he meant money. And he said if the Europeans started exercising that power, because at that time they had collectively greater gold reserves than the United States did, they could start changing all the currency values, and that would be terrible for the dollar. That really is one of the origin documents of gold price suppression. Enders telling Kissinger, we have to rig the gold price because the gold price is the determinant of all other values. And if you have the most gold, you can change all financial valuations in the world. We can't let the Europeans do that. We have to be in charge of that. That's still on the internet site of the historian of the State Department.
So, Chris, remembering, that was just after the collapse of the London gold pool in the late 1960s and forcing the closure of the gold window, that got disorderly or difficult to maintain that $35 an ounce peg. And that's, when that all broke down. Do you sense that we're on the doorstep of another event like that, in that this is pretty disorderly too, to have a year where we're up 35%?
Listen, I suspect, and pretty strongly, that all the central banks are working together, including the U.S. and the People's Bank of China, and even the Bank of Russia, to arrange this stair-step increase in the gold price. Look, they're all members of the Bank for International Settlements in Basel. The directors of the BIS meet every month. They have a secret meeting to which you and I are not invited for obvious reasons. And as their former, economic department head, William R. White, said some years ago, the main objective, one of the main objectives, is to control asset prices, particularly the gold price. The U.S. economists Lee Quaintance and Paul Brodsky wrote a paper, I don't know, it's probably 15 years ago. It's on our internet site. They hypothesized, they said that gold bugs should stop complaining about gold price suppression because they hypothesized that the real objective of central banking at that time was to control the gold price while the central banks reallocated the world's gold reserves among themselves so that when it came time to devalue the US dollar and other government currencies, they could push the gold price way up to hedge themselves against the devaluation of their own currencies. And I think this is coming to pass right now. I think Brodsky and Quaintance were right.
Yeah, I not thought of it that way, but
Jan Nieuwenhuis, who's now writing for Money Metals Exchange. He's been a gold researcher for many years, done excellent work, particularly in regard to Chinese gold positions. He has reported recently about the European central banks that specifically have what they call their gold revaluation accounts. They're already prepared to revalue the gold price and to bring their books into solvency. Look back, I think it was 20 years ago, Lyle Gramley, who was then a member of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, gave an interview to Business News Network in Canada, which is now part of Bloomberg, in which he volunteered. He was responding to complaints that the Federal Reserve's books now were making the Fed look more like a hedge fund than a central bank. And Gramley volunteered that the Fed would be a lot more solvent if it ever revalued the gold certificates from the Treasury it then held. The gold certificates for the U.S. Gold Reserve were valued at $42.22 an ounce. They're still valued at that. But Gramley, sitting member of the Fed Board of Governors, volunteered that maybe people shouldn't worry so much about the insolvency of the Fed because the Fed would be much more solvent if the gold certificates on its books were revalued to the market rate, which, was then probably close to $1,000. Gold revaluation is very much on the agenda of central banks. It's been there all the time. But, mainstream financial news organizations simply will pay no attention to it.
Right. I would imagine most of this stuff you've been citing can be found, all the documentation right there on the gata.org website, correct?
Yes, it's in the basics section. It's the top left side of our internet site. We've tried to compile in one place all the major documentation. A few years ago, I wrote a summary of it, which is in that basics section. And most of the stuff is, it's statements by central bankers. It's documents on government archives. It's public events that have happened, widely reported. It's all there out in the open, but it's prohibited knowledge.
Right. Chris, in our remaining time, let's talk a little bit about the remaining 16% of the year that we have in front. I can't believe this year's almost already over. I am excited the election's almost over. I can tell you that. We're all going to vote. Let's put it that way. We'll see when it's actually over. That comes up next week. Also next week is the next FOMC meeting by the Fed, a day later than usual, Wednesday and Thursday of next week. All sorts of data between now and then. The Fed told us at the last FOMC meeting to expect a 25 basis point rate cut in November and another one in December and 3 or 4 more next year. Do you see this as continuing to underpin the gold price as we go into the last couple of months of the year, or how do you feel about where we stand at present?
Well, it's certainly an incentive for ordinary investors and hedge funds and wealth management companies to continue to grow their monetary metals positions. Um, I think in the the big picture, the biggest reason for people to obtain gold and silver is the simple insolvency of Western governments. I mean,
Right.
here in the United States, all our politicians are always braying about, oh, we've got to spend more money on this, we got to spend more money on that. They run around passing out goodies. There's never any discussion of how it's going to be paid for. It's simply assumed we're going to, borrow the money and create it, type it in. We're just going to continue increasing the money supply. I did a little rudimentary calculation the other day, comparing the federal budget against tax receipts, and it looked to me like the U.S. government is spending 27% more money than it's taking in. Well, that 27% difference is being financed essentially by money creation.
Hmm.
That can't go on forever without even exploding inflation even more than it's been exploded in the last few years. Um, this country is living far beyond its means, but then most of the Western democracies are too. Currency devaluation is the only way out, and the only means of for ordinary people to protect themselves, I think, is with the monetary metals. I think the government fiscal situations guarantee rising monetary metals prices because they guarantee more inflation, currency devaluation.
Yeah. You're getting me to think I've done this a couple times now in the last month in interviews where I'm being interviewed. And I know you'll like this. I have this handy gold. It's not a real gold bar, right? It's a piggy bank. So don't come breaking in my window. And I mean, you can
I've
have
got
it.
one too. In fact, my camera right here is resting on one from Cambridge House.
There you go. So this is a standard form London good delivery bar that most people have seen. This kind of brick like this. They're usually on pallets. When Nixon closed the gold window, you could have had one of these for about $14,000. When you started GATA in the late 90s, it would have cost about 110,000 US dollars to have one of these. And now with gold at over $2,700 an ounce, we're talking what, $1.1 million to acquire one of these. Chris, has this thing changed?
Well,
Is
of course
there?
not. It just
Yeah,
sat there while the world went to hell.
yeah. There's no hedonic adjustment that has made this more efficient or anything, so we can say that it. No, huh? It's the same bar for crying out loud.
But it's not the same money.
Right. And I think if anything makes the point, and this is even under the scheme, the current fractional reserve pricing scheme that you and I have been deriding for years and that you've done all the research on, that banks and central banks and government support that scheme. We still have seen gold price rise that much. It makes you wonder what will happen when the scheme finally fails. I don't know if we're getting close. I don't know if you suspect we're getting close, but I would imagine this type of physical demand will continue to stress the system if it continues.
Yeah, listen, any central bank with a substantial foreign exchange surplus could have pulled the plug on the Western gold price suppression policy long ago simply by dumping treasuries and buying gold. Russia could pull the plug on it now. China could. Really, any country could do so. They know what's going on. In 2006, the deputy chairman of the Bank of Russia, Oleg Mezhevskov, gave a speech to the summer meeting of the London Bullion Market Association at the Kempinski Hotel in Moscow. The only words he spoke in English for Gold Antitrust Action Committee. And to the best of our knowledge, we'd never had any contact with anybody in Russia up to that time. Well, the Russians were watching us in 2006. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
They could pull the plug on it right now. It's simply sell everything for gold, just demand gold and as payment for everything. But they're not prepared to do it. And I think at the bottom there is still a good level of cooperation among all major central banks. Just as there was some cooperation among them during World War II. And where was that cooperation conducted? It was conducted in Basel, Switzerland, at the offices of the Bank for International Settlements.
Imagine that. Um, I agree with you, and I think most people listen or understand that as well. And I think a good closing note here is to understand that this, whether it's a remonetization or a new understanding of the usefulness of gold and the role it plays in the financial system is coming. There's still time for you to acquire some. That's the thing. That I think most people think, well, look how the price has moved up. Yeah, yeah, but there's still time to get. You can still actually get your hands on some, and that is a great way to protect yourself from this madness. And so, please be sure to visit sprottmoney.com, and get yourself some metal. Add to your stack. They'll store it for you as well, safely and efficiently. So give them a call, 888-861-0775. Please also support GATA, GATA.org, longtime friends of Eric Sprott and all of his efforts, longtime friends with Eric. And I know he just is so thankful for all that you and Bill have done over the years as well. So and I'm just very grateful for your time, my friend. Thank you for spending some time with me and wrapping up October and giving everybody kind of a historical background about where we are and where we think we're headed.
Greg, thanks for letting me harangue you and your audience, or filibuster you, as the case may be.
No, I just filibustered you for about the last 2 minutes of wrapping this up. Hey, one last thing. We are heading into November. Remember, there's all sorts of content coming from Sprott Money every single month. The best way you can make sure you don't miss any of it is to subscribe or like Sprott Money on whatever channel you've been watching or listening. Do us that favor and you won't miss out. But for now, we'll wrap up October. You and I'm looking at us. We don't need any Halloween masks, do we? We can just go as old guys and go out and trick or treat. I hope you get all the candy you want and no bag of rocks.
Well, I don't need any more candy, but if somebody wanted to drop some silver coins off on the front stoop, I'd be very happy.
I like that idea. Well, thank you, my friend. Always good to see you. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And again, keep an eye on this channel. We'll have a whole fresh batch of content for you coming next month.